Good morning and welcome to IJKL Monday with Rabbi Akiva. And I know we're doing something with Maimonides, so I'm just going to say, welcome from Jerusalem.
Perfect, Debbie. Perfect.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I guess some people are their heads are in the oven.
In a good way.
In a good way. Okay, friends, we have a lot to do today, but I feel like kind of compelled. I want to start off with a song. Just for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine, this is, it's an unbelievable phenomenon that we have a plethora. We have a plethora of songs and nigunim that are 250, 300 years old, coming mamish from Hasidic communities in the Ukraine that we have today, with no tape recorders, no thing. We have an unbelievable music library of beautiful music that came from the Hasidic Rebbes of Ukraine. So I just feel compelled to sing one of them. Okay. This comes from the dynasty of Bardichev. You know, when they speak about the Nebuch, the different cities in the Ukraine that are being attacked and destroyed now. And they're talking about East Ukraine and West Ukraine and North and South and in the middle. The honest truth is that I know 99% of all of those cities, although they pronounce some of the pronunciations of the cities are different. Are just a touch different, but I recognize from the great Hasidic Rebbes and masters of mysticism that lived in Ukraine 250 years ago. I know most of those cities because every Rebbe was named after their city. The Rebbes, usually most Jewish students did not know the last name of their Rebbes.
Right.
Most people think they didn't have last names. They did have last names, but they were always known as Menachem Mendel Mikotsk. Kotsk was the name of the city. Right. So we call him the Kotsker, the Bardichever, right? So they were all named. So I know like all of the cities there after not that I'm a student of Ukrainian geography. I know them because the holy Rebbes came from those cities and lived in those cities. Reb Nachman of Breslov, after the city of Breslov. So I feel very, very close to the tragedy that is occurring there. So we'll just start off with a little song. Straight from the Ukraine top 10 pop songs of 1768. Okay, Chevra, this is our last offering on Maimonides and the Guide. I think it's going to be a good one. So, friends, last week we were discussing the ambiguity of language, especially when we are trying to describe the undescribable. It's hard to use language, refined language, a language that captures, when we are speaking about topics about subjects that are indescribable. I mean, on the most primary level, if you want to get down to it, we even have challenges describing, forget divinity right now. Forget God, descriptions of divinity, descriptions of things that are so transcendent that we can't find words. Let's face it, we have great difficulties and challenges describing our own emotions. Sometimes we can't find words that properly target our own emotions, our own ecstasies, our own experience, our deep experiences in life, whether they are of a positive nature or they are of a negative nature. I mean, they are both realities. And sometimes we have great difficulty in assembling the words that properly manifest and display something that is very close to our hearts, that is right next door to us. We are tongue-tied in expressing love, in expressing fear, in expressing anxiety. That's why that's what actually keeps psychologists and psychiatrists in business. It's because of our inability to capture in words what we are feeling. So how much more so when we are speaking of transcendent ideas that we are not trained or might not be like fully educated. That's why we come to the Institute of Jewish Knowledge and Learning, is actually, you know, if you want to really condense what is any institution of learning, what is it for? It on a most fundamental level, it gives us language. And I have to say that over the years, over the decades, those that have been in this environment have picked up some of whom don't know any Hebrew, but have picked up a type of language, a tool through which we can better know ourselves and better express ourselves. We have developed in the institute, and that is true of many other places of learning, that we slowly and surely start resonating and picking up certain languages, certain code words. The Institute, IJKL, has code words that we got used to, and that we use. You know, someone, a few that don't know any Hebrew, know mystical terminology that is like unbelievable. So we spoke about the inadequacy when we speak of divinity, the inadequacy of language. However, language has to be used. It's the only vehicle. It's a weak vehicle, but it's the only way we can do it. So we better find words, and we better find the words of the great masters that most definitively capture the inexpressible ideas, and found words, and hopefully in the future find more words that resonate more accurately, that is indescribable. So today I want to talk, that was one thing. And today I want to talk about something else that is paradoxical, something else that is paradoxical in that Maimonides throughout the guide is trying to teach us. I say it's paradoxical. It might not be 100% of a paradox or a contradiction, but it's something that I think was novel to Maimonides. I think it was unique, unique in this work of the Guide for the Perplexed, and I do believe it's counterintuitive. One would not think that Maimonides would be saying such a thing. But he is, and I think it's a great truth. And it's one of those silver linings that run like mamish all throughout the guide. And that is the idea of the role of doubt that lines nearly every chapter of the Guide for the Perplexed. The role of doubt and confusion. And Maimonides places a great emphasis and a great positivity and validation to the role of doubt, confusion, perplexity, and kind of actually puts all of those three on somewhat of a pedestal. So for those of us that walk around a little bit with some questions, some really hard questions that seem to serve as barriers, as a mechitza, as a separation, an interruption between ourselves and our higher selves, between ourselves and what we can call divinity or God. Those obstacles that separate, that we feel the separation between ourselves and our God, Maimonides says, calm down. Calm down. Use those. Use them. They are not something, they are not things to be denied. Do not deny doubt. Do not deny it. It has its place in your spiritual growth ladder. So he says, that there is an eternal flow of the power of human beings to hatch ideas. Ideas, just in general, ideas have been hatched by human beings from the beginning of time. I love how he uses the word hatched. You know, it's like you have an idea, and the idea is an egg, really. And once we sit, we as human beings, we sit on certain ideas for X amount of time. Eventually, that idea it evolves to a point of the idea being hatched, and all of a sudden, the idea that has been warmed for X amount of time comes out of its shell and is given birth to, and the little new idea is hatched. And that has been happening since Adam and Eve. Since the first models of human beings, we have been perpetually hatching ideas. And we, today, each individual one of us, our biographies, our histories, is just one long progression of hatching our own ideas about life. And Maimonides says, as we are in this process, he cautions us and says, we should be very careful about the dangers of what he calls first thoughts. As we are in this process of hatching our little egg ideas, we have to be very careful about first thoughts. And he advises us to go always beyond first impressions. He says, in our learning process about anything and everything, friends, I'm talking like very generally now. It could apply to ideas in Torah, in spirituality, or it could be ideas in politics. It could be any idea that comes. It could be your dynamics with your family members, with your friends. This is can be applicable to anything and everything in life. He says, be very careful that you do not get stuck in your first impressions. And certainly in spirituality, free yourself from your own preoccupations of your first impressions. He asks us to apply to lessons of our lives. Be very cognizant in your ability to change your minds. In fact, he says that tshuva, which I don't like this translation, but it's a common translation, tshuva, repentance, or better, returning, or rejuvenating. He says that the primary process of tshuva, at which we usually associate with, I did something wrong and now I am changing my mind, I'm going on a different course, right? It usually is associated with that. He says primarily that's a secondary element of tshuva. He says organically, fundamentally, the idea of tshuva is our ability, our potential of changing our minds. After we change our minds, we change course of action. But he says systemically, tshuva is all about our potentiality of changing our minds, of changing direction, of thought, and then of action. Maimonides warns us about how infatuated we are with our own thoughts. And how we are able to lock ourselves into our own limited scopes and frameworks, and unable to free ourselves from that locked in position. I mean, talk about a Renaissance man. Talk about someone, who is not presenting to us dogmatic stuff. Throughout the entire guide, he is cautioning us: don't get stuck in your own thought processes. Expand. And he brings in one of the chapters, he brings an example of this in the Talmudic. You all know this. This is all, I hope, fairly familiar to you. He brings as a prime example of this unlocking of the mind. He brings the Talmudic legend and parable and metaphor of Arba Shenichnasu Lepardes, the four Talmudic sages who we all know that beautiful story, the four that entered into the orchard. That is like one of the classical mystical stories, where the Talmud relates that four brilliant masters of thought, who were sages in the Talmud, 4 of them entered into the orchard of enlightenment and attempted to see things, to understand things, to confront experientially the highest mystical places of enlightenment, and 4 went into this orchard of wisdom, and their fate was recorded in the Talmud. And the Talmud says that 1 entered into this realm of enlightenment, 1 died from the sheer power of the experiment, 1 went insane from the sheer power of the experiment, 1 became, what you know, sometimes they translate it, the one who became, what one became, the third became an atheist, but I don't think that's a proper translation. I think the proper translation is the third became a consummate skeptic. I don't think it meant atheism, because atheism is, you know what's worse than atheism? Skepticism. So I don't think it had to do with atheism. I think it had to do, he became perpetually depressed. Life meant nothing to him. Life was meaningless, and stayed that way for the rest of his life. That's worse than anything. At least you can have a lively, vibrant atheist. That person is still very human and very colorful. But once you talk about someone who is an eternal skeptic, then that person has chayehem ein chayim. Their life is no life. If you walk out of the orchard and you come out of it looking at the world and saying meaningless, purposeless, if you come out that's worse than it. That's the worst fate than anything. So that's 3 that kind of didn't make it out of the orchard. 1 came out of the orchard, and that was Rabbi Akiva, where the Talmud says Rabbi Akiva entered into the orchard in peace and left the orchard in peace. Now, Maimonides, I'm certainly not going to speak about the other 3, which, you know, it's deserving of a whole other class. What does going insane mean? What does dying in the orchard mean? What does coming out of the orchard a total and absolute skeptic mean? I want to concentrate on what Maimonides has to say of what does it mean that Rabbi Akiva came into the orchard in peace and left the orchard in peace? And Maimonides, his interpretation of that is like mind-blowing. And he says that means merely and only. It does not mean that Rabbi Akiva came out, it came out and a totally enlightened person from this orchard of enlightenment and came out. The other ones went insane. The other ones died because they couldn't take it. He says it does not mean that Rabbi Akiva came in and like saw the glory of the cosmos and saw the glory of God and came out, went in peace and came out in peace. He says not necessarily so. He says, what does it mean that Rabbi Akiva survived the orchard of enlightenment? It means that Rabbi Akiva acknowledged what he could not know. Rabbi Akiva was exposed to a form of enlightenment, and that he came out in peace means that Rabbi Akiva remained in a state of uncertainty when he left the orchard. And Maimonides says that this state of uncertainty is a state of perfection itself. Being the uncertainty is not this quality of not being sure, is not merely a means to an end, and the end being certainty. It's not merely a means to an end. It's not the stage, but before I am certain, I have to be uncertain, right? I'm uncertain, and then certain things happen, and then I am certain, I am clear. Maimonides is saying that Rabbi Akiva's leaving the orchard in a state of uncertainty is an end in and of itself. And I'm going to read for you right now what the exact quote is. And again, this is philosophical language, and it might be difficult a little bit, but I have to do justice to Maimonides to quote him. If finally you do not aspire, listen carefully, if finally you do not aspire to apprehend that which you are unable to apprehend, you will have achieved human perfection and attain the rank of Rabbi Akiva, peace be on him, who entered in peace and went out in peace when engaged in the discussion of these metaphysical matters. What an unbelievable statement. If you finally don't aspire to apprehend which you are unable to apprehend. In other words, if you have finally come to a place of investigation, of knowledge, of enlightenment, on the highest level, on the orchard, on the mystical orchard level, and you can say, I am fine with not understanding, then you have reached an unbelievably great and lofty level of enlightenment. Friends, the implication being, Maimonides wants us to know that the mind's path is actually endless. Each and every one of us, our mind's capacity is endless. And that there is no point, Chaver, listen to this, there is actually no point of ultimate truth accessible to human minds, to our human minds. And like Rabbi Akiva, we better know that. Because we'll either die very unsatisfied, or we will drive ourselves insane and go meshiga, like searching and searching and searching. Well, the search is important. But if we are under the illusion that there is an ultimate truth, a goal that we are going to reach, to be able to say, "Oi, Mazel Tov, I have arrived." Maimonides says, you are not following the lofty path of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva's lofty path, the way he came out of the orchard of enlightenment, was not with certainty, but actually the opposite, with uncertainty in his ability to attain certainty. I think we come to that a little naturally and biologically as we grow older, as we elder. I believe I have seen amongst the chevra, amongst my constituents for so long, even when I was a young rabbi with an elder congregation, I learned a little bit of this phenomenon from the elders, because when I was a young rabbi, I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew all of the Torah that I needed. I thought I knew all about life, and I thought I knew all about the divine will. I knew what God wanted, and then promulgate that in teachings to my congregation. And as I was exposed to elders, I slowly and gradually said, my youthful certainty is not so clear. Do you remember when you were a teenager, or if you are today exposed to teenagers? Teenagers walk around with a type of certainty, a type of absolute knowledge of themselves, which is a great thing. It's a great thing. I remember when I was like 1,000% sure of myself, sure of everything, and that actually in one way creates idealism. I felt the power of ideals and values, and I was so sure about it that I got into the business of teaching about values and ideal standards, and that's a very good thing. But we now, as elders, we also recognize that youthful idealism is so unbelievably, although it's what propels civilization, it is also unbelievably frickin' arrogant. Youthful certainty has a tinge, a color of arrogance and egotism that we as elders, we can sit back and say, not 100%. And Maimonides is saying the same thing. Even when we're elders, especially our youthful ideas don't get locked up in them. Uncertainty is a pathway to enlightenment. And when you are certain about specific things, Maimonides says, you are locking yourself up. You are not allowing your mind to expand. So there's a blessing and a curse in being certain. Okay, I'm gonna take a little sip of tea, and anyone that wants to comment or.
Rabbi, it's Joni. Hi.
Hi, Joni.
Lovely to see you once again. Miss you terribly. So my question is, I never believed that we could know everything, because I think of, like starting a new class that's brand new to me, and the teacher will say, well, what questions do you have? And I'm thinking, I have no idea even what kind of a question to ask. So, but that being said, are you saying that we should not question the deep things that where our mind wanders to and where our hearts kind of lead us? Or do we still question and be okay with not really getting an answer and just allowing our mind to expand into something that makes sense to us?
Okay, Joni, there's no way that Maimonides here is promoting ignorance.
Right.
He is not promoting ignorance. He is not promoting a lack of inquiry and a lack of searching, and to use your word, searching and questioning. He actually says we should be searching and questioning everything. However, when we come to certain conclusions, he is vehemently advising us, don't be satisfied with the conclusions. We have to come to that. If anyone, Maimonides was the most rational thinker and goes from logically A to B to C to D. And if there's any questions, you know, he certainly wasn't against questioning or inquiry. He was saying, once you come to some conclusions, don't get stuck in them. Leave a certain amount of room open in your little Kepler. Not room for expansion. He is creating a correspondence between doubt and perplexity and questioning. He is, out of those three, he is saying those are the same ingredients that is going to help you expand more. Your questions, your doubts, our inability to understand are all their foundation is all a good thing, because it helps us expand. The worst thing, he is saying, that can be done to enlightenment, to an enlightened person, is to be stuck in their enlightenment. And doubt, perplexity, and questioning helps loosen the chains of constricted ideas.
Okay. Thank you.
Rabbi, I have two statements. One, Maimonides said, Ani ma'amin be'amuna shlema, I believe with perfect faith. And I think that's what he means. There's no change. Another thing is that someone asked me to sign off if I want to no resuscitation. I said, I can't say what I want whenever that time comes. When the time comes, I'll make a decision. So those are two things. I think what you said, yes and no.
Okay,
Perfect
Marilyn,
faith.
I appreciate you. Yeah, I appreciate both questions. I'll address the first question. I don't take the 13 ani ma'amins. I believe, just for the rest, that might not, ani ma'amin are the 13 principles, what turned out to be the 13, a list. It's not the only list. A list of 13 principles of Jewish faith. And he starts off with Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalema, I believe with a perfect faith that, ... that, ... Marilyn, I'm just going to plant this this idea in your head. I don't believe, I believe I take the Ani Ma'amins in the sense that Maimonides was really trying to state in the Ani Ma'amins that the 13 Ani Ma'amins are principles that we the Jewish people should be striving towards. I don't believe that, I think Ani Ma'amin Be'emunah Shalema is not a factual statement. I believe with a perfect faith, because all throughout the guide, he is, it's actually an excellent question, Marilyn, that you picked up on this. All throughout the guide, he is talking about the inability of ultimate truth. I don't think that there is, I don't think that there is such a thing as in practical terms as Emunah Shalema, as a perfect. I don't think there's anything in this world that is perfect. Only God is perfect. Tsuri v'lo avlatabo. Only divinity is perfect. I don't think in this world of ours, in the world of Malchut, anything is perfect. So when Maimonides says, I believe with a perfect faith, I think we have to take that poetically. I strive towards a perfect, complete faith. I strive towards it. But I don't think he's speaking, I don't think we should be taking that literally. I think it's more poetic.
You can feel very inadequate if you couldn't go along with.
Yeah, I really think, I don't think there is anything shalem in this world of Malchut. Okay, but excellent pickup, Marilyn. Deborah,
We do have,
anyone else on hold?
we have 3 people on the lineup. We've got Rabbi Risa, then
Risa?
Sandra, and Mike. And then you'll be able to.
Okay. Okay, go. Rabbi Risa.
You're muted still.
Unmute yourself.
Mute. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. I'm going to take us kind of back to the beginning of the class, something that I found very interesting. You brought out about our ideas and first thoughts, and how delicate they can be if I understood you correctly, and how delicate they can be as perhaps an egg. And sometimes many of us don't think before speaking. Therefore, giving first impressions could be a very delicate situation. And when we do that, my analogy was that the egg, because all we have to do is crack our mouths open with our first impressions. And once you crack, you can't take it back. And is that kind of what you were speaking about?
That's also what I was speaking about.
Okay.
That's included certainly in what I was speaking about. I was predominantly thinking about talking about ideas that come to mind, and that Maimonides is saying first impressions of ideas, they are great, but keep them in their proper categories, because first ideas, it reminds me of if you may or may not know of the Baal Tshuva mentality. Someone who is far from Judaism is exposed to Judaism, and within 6 months of going to some yeshiva, think they know Judaism and the will of God, and that's like Maimonides saying first impressions. Cool it. Be aware that your wisdom, your enlightenment at this early stage is going to mature, is going to evolve, and don't cool it. and that certainly is true with the immediacy of what comes out of our mouths before we speak, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, if one is not aware of the first impression of what is going to come out of our mouths, it's irretrievable. Usually what comes out of our mouths is irretrievable. It's hard to take it back. So yeah. So it's certainly a lesson in first impressions.
It reminds me of the beautiful prayer we say at the end of the Amida. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart. I think that's something that we should possibly consider saying. Many of us should consider saying before saying anything. We should recite that.
Risa, it's long enough to recite that after we recite it, we probably will not be saying what we are saying.
That's
what
very
we were
true.
about to say.
That's very true.
Okay. Deborah, thank you, Risa.
Sandra.
Okay, this is a very simple question. Maybe it's a simple-minded question, but is that what the very ultra-Orthodox religious youth and older people are doing, sitting in the yeshiva day after day after day? Are they striving to find the perfection?
I can't go into their minds, but some are falsely striving for perfection, but I would say that the larger sentiment around that is I simply am on this elongated journey of inquiry. I don't think most of them are looking for perfection. I think most have learned what Maimonides is saying. I think those that are really Sandra, it is no different. They are no different than lifelong learners. What we call in America, or shall I say, what you call in America, what you call long life learners, that's a huge compliment. I was at a memorial service yesterday, and someone on IJKL Zoom that complimented the deceased as a lifelong learner, and that's a compliment. These people that you're referring to are predominantly lifelong learners, and their inquiry, their search is lifelong. Maimonides is not saying don't be a lifelong learner, do not be a lifelong inquirer. He is saying, as you perpetually inquire and inquire, don't ever not be like Rabbi Akiva. Don't ever lock yourself in to a certainty that is going to imprison your mind. And we're going to get to the higher levels of what he's talking about. Just don't be so arrogant as to be certain. Sandra, today, I think that is one of the top 3 maladies of society today across the world, in intellectual, political, and spiritual spheres, is the arrogance of everyone being so certain about their banner of knowledge, their banner of politics, their banner of religion. I'm the best. No, you're the best. I'm the truth. No, you're the truth. Everyone is claiming absolute truth. And Maimonides is saying, rubbish. Even our Rabbi Akiva is walking out of Pardes, out of the orchard of enlightenment, uncertain, leaving room open for uncertainty, for new knowledge. Mike, thank you, Sandra.
Yeah, good morning, Rabbi. A couple of just thoughts. I agree. What you described this morning was just beautiful. I just like to agree with you, and very easy today because everything was right on. Just a couple of words. That what struck me is that doubt seems to be the mother of thought. That thinking process is really stimulated by doubt. If we didn't have doubt about something, we wouldn't be thinking about it. So it's the mother of thought. And to remain in wonder or awe or uncertainty, the uncertainty to be, it's like being open so that we can expand. And that expansion, because we're open in wonder, in just that awe of state of wonder, is from the opposite, is being less contracted, less narrow. And for our Passover holiday coming up, we're continually coming out of Egypt.
Absolutely, Mike.
Last thought is just because there may not be an ultimate answer does not mean we're to stop looking for it. And that kind of like circular reasoning brings me back to the doubt and the thinking.
Yes, beautiful, Mike. The search must go on.
Yeah.
The search, the inquiry, the lifelong learning, and the lifelong doubt and perplexity does and will and must go on. But as soon as you've hit a certain point in your life, in your understanding, in your enlightenment, where you are, where you say to yourself, I've got it. That is when Maimonides says, that is when you're finished, you're over. That's the story of the Pardes. That's either when you go insane or you die, or you. Rabbi Akiva is the only one who comes out with uncertainty and in peace, because that continues, that enables him to continue his journey.
Yeah. And I think for me, giving up the anxiety of trying and striving to find the ultimate answer some time ago, when I finally realized for myself that my assumption was that there is no ultimate answer. I didn't stop looking, but I just dropped the anxiety of knowing I'm not going to get it. But the search is the wonder that is the pull of life that keeps pulling you into to staying alive.
And let me add to that. I have, you know, some stuff on this topic, on this like angle, a little bit later on. Debbie, tell me what time it is. I have to time my.
You have 15 minutes. I was going there.
Oh God! Oh God!
Yes, she's listening.
We need another week.
I don't know what I'm gonna do if that's the case. Okay, so Chevra, let me go on without any interruption. We'll see how far we get. Okay. There is a place in the guide for the perplexed, where Maimonides does describe somewhat of a successful journey, culminating in true knowledge, true enlightenment, true absolute enlightenment. And it's part of, I didn't want to go through this series without including this most famous of Maimonidean parables, which some of you know, some of you might not. It's the parable of the king and his palace. In this parable, which is fairly unique to Maimonides, if you would be talking about Reb Nachman of Breslov, you get a million parables. Maimonides maybe has three parables, because he mostly spoke in philosophical and Aristotelian language. But Maimonides in this parable compares. Listen very carefully. He compares true intellectual and spiritual enlightenment to the entry into the innermost chambers of a king's habitation. He creates a metaphor. The king's habitation, the king's palace, and enlightenment, true enlightenment, are synonymous. So going into the king's palace is going basically into the orchard of enlightenment. And he talks about different kinds of people who want to get into the palace. And I want us to take us on this on one level, like personally, and to kind of think of the people around you and the people in the world on, just on a global level, on a community level, on a personal level. And he describes the different people around the palace. So I'm sorry, now that I think of it, Maimonides' palace is the same, really the same metaphor as the Talmud uses in the orchard, right? Four entered into the orchard. It's all talking about the orchard that is within our brain, our neshamas, our inner, the inner sanctum of the human of the human being. And he says some of the people around the palace in the kingdom, some are absolutely not interested at all in entering or even visiting or getting close to the king in his palace. In other words, some people in the world are absolutely disinterested in enlightenment. Take it as you may. We have met them. I would honestly say that every single person on this screen is not in that category, or else he wouldn't be here. But there are some, and of course there are degrees. There are some that are absolutely, you talk to me about God, you talk to me about divinity, about transcendence, you're talking to me about cockroaches. I could be as interested. Then Maimonides says, there are those that very much want to have a yearning to be within the city that the palace exists in. They want to be in the city of the palace of the king, but they want to be, but they turn their backs on the palace of the king. So it's another level of disinterest. I don't mind being in the proximity of the king's palace, but I am told, what does that tell you about different religious levels in different in all traditions? But we'll talk about our traditions. People that are, they don't deny their Judaism, they don't deny their connection to Judaism, but I turn my back on it. I really don't want to get involved. I recognize it, I can acknowledge it, but I really don't want to get involved in any way. So I turn my back on Jewish spirituality. Then there are those who actually are earnestly seeking to enter into the king's habitation, but stop their search at the walls of the palace. So those are people in a state of mind that dip their toes into enlightenment, dip their toes into some program of maybe a abyssal spirituality, abyssal culture. I will dip my toes, but I will not put my, I do not commit my toes. I commit, but I don't commit my full body, not into a full swim. You know, I'm kind of like neutral. Then there are those who actually are thirsting to enter into the walls of the palace. They feel this yearning inside, and they enter into the walls of the palace. These are all like, right, different levels. They enter into the walls and they simply commit themselves to just walking around the walls. They're satisfied with walking around the proximity. Then there are those who go further and push forward to the past the walls into the antechamber of the king or queen. And they're really feeling the energy, the king being the ultimate of enlightenment, right? It's very much like the Wizard of Oz kind of story, right? And then Maimonides says there are those that have such a personal yearning and this personal journey where they actually enter into the inner parts of the king's habitation, but have not yet met the king. And then there are those that actually come into the proximity or become close enough to the king, close enough to the highest level of enlightenment, that there is an absolute, this is Maimonides' words, there's an absolute closeness or devekut with enlightenment, with divinity. I know we have little time left. This parable of the king and coming, the king and his palace, and us seeking and searching for for our own deeper wisdom. Maimonides says that within this search has to include our ability to know when we cannot reach absolute clarity. Chevra, I think this is such a vital thing. If we are mixed up about our lives, about our purpose in life, in where little old me stands in the vastness of the universe, and we don't understand our own significance, compared to the cosmic plane that we have reached. Maimonides is telling us, if we cannot understand that and we are perplexed, I'm using the word on purpose, and we are perplexed about our place in this reality, in this world, he says, be okay with that, because if we can only say that we have come close to the king, not become one with the king, become one with absolute enlightenment. If we keep on inquiring and searching and yearning, and we find ourselves becoming closer to a self-understanding that is surrounded by enlightenment, then you have emulated Rabbi Akiva, who went into the Pardes, who went into the orchard of enlightenment and came out in peace. Because all we are meant here to do is not to reach the absolute, but rather to touch the closeness, to become more close. And that adventure to become more close to our enlightened selves is the most we can ever ask for. Do not create for yourself a false impression that the absolute has to be met. Convince yourself to come out of enlightenment with the beauty of uncertainty, but yet being close. Rabbi Akiva, coming out of the Pardes, is teaching us to stand in your place, wherever you are, to stand in your place of humility. Stand in your place of magnificent doubt. And wonder. Stand in that place. Embrace that place. You know, Chevra, I'll end with this. I would summarize one of the main message of the Guide for the Perplexed. Engage yourself in acquiring knowledge. Maimonides uses the word knowledge. He really means enlightenment. Engage yourself in acquiring knowledge, but don't ever hesitate or shrink from the challenge of living in perplexity. Perplexity is not an enemy of enlightenment. Maimonides is trying to convince us that perplexity leads us to a sense that God and the world, friends, it exceeds our understanding. Not only God, but the world that God placed us in exceeds our understanding. Live with it. Embrace that. Friends, I believe that the title of his 3-volumed book, the title of the book, The Guide for the Perplexed, does not mean that Maimonides was saying, I will guide you out of your perplexity. I will straighten you out. I will straighten you out through this book. Like a dogmatic. Maimonides' guide for the perplexed. I don't think Maimonides was telling us this book will unperplex you. I think the actual opposite is true. Maimonides was promoting and advancing the deep and mystical idea by saying simply, I will offer you this book as a guide, as a pathway, an understanding, a shtickle of a map, a shtickle of a technique to refine and sophisticate your perplexities. This book, I think Maimonides is saying, will advance your understanding of understanding. I'll give you a little map of how not to understand so you don't get caught up in your own understanding of stuff. Maimonides, the guide for the perplexed, he is basically saying there is enlightened perplexity that you should engage in, and then there is paralyzing perplexity that you ought to take care of through increasing your knowledge and your education. Paralyzing perplexity, do something about it. get yourself a Rebbe, get yourself a guru, get yourself some guidance. Enlightened perplexity, keep on going with enlightened perplexity. Because if we view enlightenment as only ending up in refined perplexity, then we effectively will have entered into the chamber, the antechamber of the king. Uncertainty is going to unlock the Kodshe Kodshim, the Holy of Holies for us. And we're out of time. I could have gone on.
Thank you, Rabbi Akiva. Chag Sameach.
I wish all of you a Chag Sameach. Have a wonderful festival of liberation. Let your enlightenment and let your uncertainty liberate you from any paralysis that has confined you.
Chag Sameach, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.